That's supposed to be the killer. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate. Coming your way in this kind of mid to late October day, 2017. I'm coming at you with a movie review for a horror movie that's something I was kind of interested in. I got, I don't know if it was blue-ray.com or Amazon or somewhere I saw this cover. I'm coming at you to review Lost After Dark. This is just a DVD that I picked up on that Half Price Books clearance rack for $3, and I'm like, I was back, I don't know when it came out. This says 2015, and back when this came out or not long after it came out, I was almost contemplating getting the Blu-ray, just blind buying the Blu-ray, but alas, that never happened, and which I'm kind of glad about. But I did end up, obviously, years later or months later or whatever, acquire the DVD for $3. So this, as you may or may not know, is kind of one of these, which aren't really done too much. Movies like Grindhouse and stuff. I mean, I'm not too sure I really am aware of so much actually of another movie that really does this. It seems to me there are. And this movie is a new movie that probably was filmed maybe 2013, maybe was finished 2014. It says something like Screamfest Horror Festival 2014, so this was probably obviously done 2014 or whatever, finished and, available to be screened. And it's a horror movie that takes place in the 80s, so it's kind of a movie, should be right up my alley, and it kind of works, it kind of does, it doesn't, I'll get into it, but it should be right up my alley because it's a horror movie that's basically made in whatever, 2013 or 12 or whatever, and supposed to actually take place 1984 if memory serves. So straight out the bat, the beginning was kind of cool. Obviously, if you've seen Grindhouse, the double feature with Planet Terror and Death Proof, obviously the beginning will seem very familiar, and it's unfortunate that if Grindhouse didn't do it first, for me it's kind of the movie that really solidified the shooting of movies digitally or whatever, and putting the I don't think Death Proof was probably not shot digitally, but I think Planet Terror probably was, and but even if it wasn't, they put obviously this kind of old tattered print quality effect to the image at spots or whatever. And that's how the beginning of this movie starts. I've been doing beat by beats, just like almost mini movies lately, and I'm going to really try not to just do like a whole, I don't know what the hell, it's like the more I review, the more I just do like every single moment just from the beginning to the end. I'm just going to try not to do that. But I will just simply say that the way this movie begins very much harkens back to like, the Grindhouse double feature movie. And it has that, the first scene of this movie, like pre-title scene, has that, it's very short, but it has that Grindhouse kind of, the film made to, or the image made to look like old tattered film or whatever. And actually, when I first saw this, which was not too long ago, maybe a couple weeks ago, I got this and saw it for the first time. I kind of liked, even though it is really short, I kind of liked that opening scene with just this old house at night, and hot girl comes running out and basically just, I think she gets caught in like an animal trap and then killed somehow by some killer or whatever, and then it's kind of like the title is just like put on the screen or whatever, Lost After Dark, and then we try not to do a beat by beat, but I will just say we introduce like, what is it? I think it might be 8 kids, which seems like a lot actually, but basically it's at some school dance. I don't know if it's like the prom or whatever, or actually this kind of like, it's very much like Texas Chainsaw Next Generation or whatever, where these characters are danced like a prom type thing, and this main character girl's lied to her dad and said she's going on a sleepover, when in fact they're gonna her and these other 7 kids are gonna basically hotwire the school bus, which is a kind of cool 80s slasher idea or whatever, and take the school bus and go to I think her dad's got this lake house or whatever, and she stole the key for that. So basically, her and 7 other kids or teenage high school aged people go to do that, aided by this fat kind of nerd guy. this one fat nerd guy is kind of the nerd guy who hotwires the car, and he obviously, apparently also supplies the characters, primarily this girl he's got a crush on, with pot, marijuana, cannabis, whatever. And so there. So basically, not long after they hotwire the bus and hop on it, they head off to this whole movie except for like that one establishing shot of that one girl character basically takes place at night. Basically heading off into the country to the lake house or whatever. And it also should be noted that what's his name is in this. Robert Patrick is like the vice principal of the high school they go to, and he's one of these characters that probably filmed in 2 or 3 days or whatever. And kind of like with Sam Loomis in Halloween, it's like he's interspersed throughout the movie to kind of make the most of his limited appearance in the movie. But I think he's a vice principal or whatever, or an assistant, the next down from principal or whatever, and he kind of gets wind of the kids stealing the bus, and he goes and tells the main character's dad, and basically tracks them down to where they end up at this creepy house. So to make the review just go on, or try to move it along, basically that not long after they head out for their trip towards the cabin or lake house or whatever, the school bus runs out of gas. The gas meter is like faulty. It says half a tank, but it's out of gas. And this is the movie's kind of cool up until then, but in my opinion, like, I don't know if it's like 25-minute mark or 30-minute mark or something like that, kind of towards as we're ticking towards, well, you might as well just call it the first third of the movie. Once you're kind of to the first third of the movie, in my opinion, this movie really kind of slows down, and it seems like they're just lollygagging around the broken down bus. The fat guy and the girl he's got a crush on go walking for, I don't know what the hell they're even going walking for. I can't remember, help or something. They always got to do that in these kind of movies. And then the rest of the kids just kind of lollygag behind at the bus, and it's just kind of, in my opinion, the movie really, maybe the second third of this movie, which is maybe the 30-minute mark or something to maybe the hour-minute mark, for me is just really kind of, it inches along like an earthworm. It's just like, okay, but that's just my opinion about that. Another thing that's kind of goofy that I don't quite understand why it's in there, this movie is supposed to take place in 1984, yet this one character is wearing a Letterman's jacket that I can only assume has the year 09 on it. So, I don't know, it kind of doesn't make any sense to me, unless he plans to be in high school for a very long time, why this character is going to high school in 1984 has a Letterman's jacket with 09 on it. So maybe I'm not up on my Letterman's jacket stuff, and it's not really supposed to be the year, but it's kind of my assumption that the year is supposed to be on the last 2 digits of the year are supposed to be on that one of the arms or whatever, and it's clearly 09 on that Letterman's jacket, so I don't know what the deal is with that. Another thing that's kind of cool is there's maybe like 2 or 3, I don't know if I would imagine they're recently done songs, or maybe even done by the guy who did the music or whatever, but there's 2 or 3 like songs in the movie that the characters are listening to or that play in the movie that very much harken back to like the 80s. So that kind of stuff, along with just not so much, well, I guess some of those fashion styles also do, but also just seeing all these older vehicles, and I think Robert Patrick's character's got this really cool Corvette or whatever. So, and then the 2 or 3 80s songs, which I imagine are new kind of songs that are supposed to sound like 80s, are pretty cool. And of course the black guy puts in a rap tape, and it sounds like 80s rap, and then, so there's things in this movie that really do a pretty good job at trying to actually make it feel like 80s. So I will give it that. And this one character who's kind of like, I don't know, the uppity couple or whatever with this guy who looks really like a lot like a young Leonardo DiCaprio, and his kind of just airhead girlfriend or whatever. The guy's wearing like a pink button down with a tie or whatever, and it's I'm not 100%, but I didn't think really guys necessarily wore pink so much in the 80s. From what I can remember, I don't think that was back in the good old days. I think when pink was kind of for girls, so that might be more like a modern day or contemporary, as in right now, like 21st century thing that maybe accidentally made its way into movies that's supposed to take place in the 80s, and also some of the characters, but it's so embedded in culture, the writer might not even realize it, but some of the, catchphrases, like the stuff like, I was like, really? These kind of phrases that are more 21st century things made their way into the dialogue and stuff, but this might not even be, known to the people who are making the movie. It might be just, they might not even be catching it themselves. But that's some of the things I noticed in regards to trying to make this movie seem like an actual movie from the 80s, or a movie that took place in the 80s that was made. Presumably you would imagine that they are making it to pretend like it was actually made in the 80s as well. So those are some things that kind of, in my opinion, showed that it wasn't in fact in the 80s, which is kind of you should try not to do that. Another thing about movies like this that are always made now is obviously the soundtracks are always like 5.1 or more channel mixes and stuff. And one of my arguments for a movie like this is, if you're making a movie that's supposed to look so much like an old movie, and like particular, if this is 1984 and this is a low budget horror movie, it's not going to have a surround track, let alone a 5.1. So one thing I would do if I were doing one of these movies is just make it mono. I mean, it probably doesn't even occur to the filmmakers to even make it mono, but to me that would be something that would be very cool to really solidify the authenticity of being a low budget movie made in 1984. But like I say, I mean, I don't know if it even occurs to the people that make these movies, or in this one in particular, to do that. But if I was doing a movie like that, that's definitely what I would do. So basically the characters stumble, across, I'd say maybe, I don't know, halfway into the movie they stumble across this old, kind of dilapidated, rotting, whatever you want to call it, farmhouse in the country or whatever, which I regard as just kind of nasty, and I don't really like, nasty. I've said it in me and Matt saw franchise review is just like, I don't really like nasty, dirty, dingy, crappy, just rotting locations. Like, just my personality. So this whole, like the second half of this whole movie just basically takes place at this rotting, nasty old kind of farmhouse, if you will. And I'm not too keen on the antagonist in this movie, which is kind of like a Rob Zombie white trash looking just killer with long hair and a beard, I think, and just like, it is kind of funny during the one kill where the one of them that I kind of really like, where he actually kills this guy with like a really long hand-operated drill, where it's just like a handle on the end, and he just kind of puts it in this kid's back and just turns it manually. He's kind of like, his tongue kind of comes out like he's concentrating, whatever. That was kind of funny. But generally, I don't know. I'm not too keen on this, the kind of the white trash killer in this movie, but that's just my opinion. And then at one point towards, I don't know what, maybe a little past halfway through the movie, there's this part with this girl these girls basically, after the bus breaks down, they change from their dresses, prom dresses or dance dresses, into this kind of really cool, just other, more casual, wear and stuff. And a lot of the girls' outfits are really cool, in particular the blonde with like the yellow top and the leggings and whatever. She looks like she's right out of the 80s, so I really appreciated that. But what I was getting at is, when this girl is basically being, attacked, or, when accosted by the killer, it was something very lame that happens at the time when I first saw it, and I'm just like, it's just, oh my God, it's right out of Grindhouse. And actually both of the movies do it in Grindhouse, and in the theatrical versions are the missing reel thing. So we don't actually see this blonde killed, and I was just like, oh my God, talk about roll eye moment. But what ends up being kind of cool, and I'll give the movie props for, they actually made up for it later on, if I can spoil this little tidbit, is that you just assume, that character died and we just didn't see it, which I thought at the time was just so lame and such a cheap way to not show a kill. But actually they do a really kind of cool trick with the missing reel gimmick in this movie, because later on this girl will end up showing up again alive. So it's kind of cool the way they used it in this movie. And one of the better things about this movie is making the viewer think she's dead, and then later on she shows up actually still alive. So that was one of the cool things about the missing reel gimmick in this movie, and a way to actually use it in a better way, kind of a decent way, instead of just a gimmick, The one bit with the uppity couple or whatever that they go into the barn and kind of take shelter in this old car that's covered with the tarp was kind of cool. She's got this yippity dog, and I was always wondering why the hell the writer wrote this scene where this girl basically brings this yippity dog in her purse or whatever, the movie, and or with her with her along in this movie. And I think, basically the main reason is, if I can spoil another detail, this reason where they get in this car with a tarp on and they're trying to hide out for the night until morning, and this dog is like, making noise and shit, and the guy's like, Leonardo DiCaprio wannabe guy is like, shut the dog up, and she's like, okay, be quiet, and then she's like in this scene that's probably one of the most disturbing scenes in the whole movie, which is funny because we don't see anything, and it's just kind of like she basically goes and it breaks the dog's neck, and it's just like, even the boyfriend's just like so that scene was kind of funny and interesting. So she killed her dog so the dog wouldn't give them away. Alas, it didn't work. Moments later, I think she gets, like, they show, this is a couple of my two favorite kills in the movie, along with the manual drill kill, is, I don't know, they're sitting in the back seat, and the killer, grabs a pitchfork and shoves it through, basically, I don't know how this happens, but whatever, it's a movie, comes right through the back seat where she's sitting, and through her, and it's like, and then the boyfriend jumps out, and he kind of goes under the old car to hide, and very much with, like, the very last scene, it's after the credits in Return to Sleepaway Camp, the killer, and a really cool, actually, thing that you don't expect, the killer just kind of kicks out this car jack or whatever, and so the car comes down and just splats the guy out, which is kind of cool. Like, he dies really soon after the girl, so it's not like just, oh my god, here we go, chase scene or cat and mouse to get the boyfriend. So that was, those two kills were kind of cool because they happen, relatively soon, right after each other and stuff, and it's just like kind of cool. So all in all, I'd say the movie is kind of slow. It almost seemed like it was more like a 45-minute movie that was, stretched out to be a feature length or whatever, just being like 85 minutes, and that's including credits. So like before, by the time the credits roll or whatever, you only spent like 80 minutes watching the movie. I feel like it really, really just was a short film that was extended into a feature. It just seems like during the, the midway point of this movie, it just really seems to just inch along like an inchworm or whatever, but it was a solid effort. a modest effort. They accomplished, I'd say they more or less probably accomplished what they were probably setting out to do, which is to make a movie that looked like it could have been shot in 1984 or 83 or whatever. Like I say, the old cars, some of the fashions of what kids are wearing, and some of the music tunes that are supposed to be like from the 80s really kind of helped to sell that effect. And I will say in closing that I won't say how it ends, but I'll say the way it ends isn't, it's kind of a anticlimactic or unimpressive ending. It's just kind of like, as soon as, I just rewatched this last night, and as soon as the ending happened, I was just like, they probably could have come up with something better, but one of the things is that when you're making one of these movies that's supposed to be like an old, just kind of, whatever kind of, horror movie from the 80s, is like, it kind of makes no sense to really strive for excellence, because in a way, if you're trying to make an old, or just a movie a low budget movie from 1984 or whatever, that's just part of the point, or at least in my opinion, or I don't know what the hell they set out to do, but part of the point is potentially to make something that is non-amazing, because a lot of the horror movies and exploitation stuff that were just out to make money in the 80s, of course, were unexceptional. So maybe, so you can't really, so in a way it's kind of like you can't really get on this movie too much. It's kind of like this movie gets a pass in that regard, because, who knows, maybe they were trying for the lame ending or whatever, because maybe for them a lot of these movies had that kind of lame ending, and they sure as hell, not to say that they didn't, but anyway, I'm rambling. At the end of the day, kind of underwhelming. We're going to give this movie 1 3/4 stars out of 4 stars for Lost After Dark. Solid, or a modest effort, but it kind of falls flat. Not to say that there's not cool things about it, or cool characters, or cool kills. Obviously there are, but it's just, for being 80 minutes long, it sure seems longer, and just seems to lollygag a lot. So thank you very much for watching this review, and as always, we'll catch you in the next one.